Booz Allen Hamilton has become an example, in part through this, for the government outsourcing of security functions. And part of the Snowden debate is about whether that's a good idea. And obviously you support the work Booz Allen does in this area, and I just wonder if you think the country should support that work.
I won't comment on Snowden and that sort of. We've got a position that's under federal investigation, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment there. Let me comment on the higher part of your question. A lot of us military guys who wore a few ribbons, not as many as the Congress lady here, like to beat our chest and say we won the Cold War. I would tell this audience and anybody that would listen that the military did not win the Cold War. The free market won the Cold War. The free market has a way of creating ideas and products and services, and if you're really good and people buy them, you succeed. If you're inefficient, you don't succeed and you go out of business. That doesn't happen in something like a communist world. So the military sort of kept them at bay until they imploded under their own weight, because there's nothing to make them efficient. Now, my belief is, when I look out at Department of Defense, having served there for 30 years, we're the best in the world. We are the best in the world. We can go anywhere and accomplish just about any mission. Everything we use is made in the private sector. Ships, airplanes, submarines, ammunition, it's all manufactured in the private sector. So there's some element of bringing the best and brightest of the free market, innovation, creativity, new ideas, in to equip those of us in the military or whatever function we have in government to carry out our duties in the most productive way. So in the way I think about it, if you take away the ability of the government to harness the private sector, it would do serious harm to our collective interest.
Let me ask one other question relating to this, which you may or may not be able to answer, and that's the simple one, as how the people at Booz Allen Hamilton feel about Snowden having been a fellow employee.
Let me just say that if you will read General Alexander's description of the harm and how he feels about what he calls a traitor, at least those that I talk to in my company reflect a similar point of view. Now, remember what Alexander said. This has caused irrevocable harm to our ability to protect the country. I want to make 2 points. Most people don't appreciate this. The mission of the United States intelligence community is very clear. Protect the country focused on foreign threats. Protect the country focused on foreign threats. That's what we do. By compromising this information, we will be less able to do that mission.
Yep, please, and then I want to come back to you, Dan.
Okay. First, it is still not known, and when it becomes known, I do not know if it will be or should be public, how much information Snowden took. I would not assume that it's limited to the operations of these programs. If he really had, as reported in the press, a thumb drive, and he moved to Booz Allen for the purpose of having an environment where he believed he could more easily extract classified information, and if, let's just imagine, that information has now been fully shared because they required it for him to stay alive with, I'm speculating, with the Chinese and the Russians, this is a potential catastrophe. So wrap your heads around that. I think one thing that should be fixed, Mike, you make a point about the private sector's role in our defense, but the clearance system that we have for secret and top secret clearances is broken. It's a 19th century model. It's ridiculously labor intensive. A lot of it isn't even online and updated.
I would agree with
and for a person in the kind of position he had, I forget what systems administrator, where he was the boss, supervising himself in a position where he had enormous access, there needs to be what's called the two-person rule.
Right.
Somebody else ought to be watching, and there isn't a huge number of these folks. It's about 1,000. That's again been reported in the press.
Right.
And maybe those folks ought to all be federal employees, and there ought to be enormous amounts of supervision over them so this can't happen again.